Sturgeon Bay, District 6220, Northeast Wisconsin, and part of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I'm doing the presentation a little later on here.
Doug is Dennis is our speaker. Thanks so much. Doug, would you like to reintroduce yourself now that we have a larger group?
Yeah, my name is Doug Lobel, and currently I'm the compliance officer for Rotary Youth Exchange Florida, but I'm also the youth exchange officer for my club, the Rotary Club of Inverness, which is about 100 miles north of Tampa. And I previously served for 7 years as chairman of District 6950 Rotary Youth Exchange.
Thanks very much. Welcome and glad you're here. John Green.
I'm John Green from Rotary District 5190. My Rotary Club is the Rotary Club of Reno Sunrise in Reno, Nevada. And I've been on the district RIYE committee for about 20 years. I serve as the executive secretary for our program. And John, I have a question. Is it possible to record this session so some of my absent members can look in on it later?
You got it. So I am recording. I've recorded. We record all of our meetings. We post them to YouTube, and then we have a link. My challenge has been getting them out to people on the call. People on the, I can send it out on the NAYEN list, which is pretty expansive. But if you've been invited to join, I don't really have a way of, reaching out to you. But if you'd like a copy, why don't you just, for anyone who would like a link to today's meeting, if you could just type in the group chat that's down on the bottom, the chat button, type in your email. I'll grab them during the presentation, and then we'll get something out to you. Thanks for mentioning that. Sandy, would you like to go next?
Sure. I'm Sandy Teston from 6220, that's Mid-Wisconsin, same district as Dennis, and I'm on the District RIYE Committee.
Welcome, and I'm glad you're here. Steve S.
I'm Steve Schwab. I'm with District 5100 in Northern Oregon. I am currently the compliance officer for the Youth Exchange Program, but have done all the positions, including district chair for the Youth Exchange Program here.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for being here. Vicki, would you like to say hi?
Hi, Vicki Dilley from Northfield, Minnesota, District 5960. The eastern part of southern Minnesota. I've been involved in youth exchange since the year 2000 when we hosted our first student. It has just been incrementally more involvement since then. And currently I'm just helping with the hub, the database system, in our districts, our STAR.
Thanks for all you do. Thanks, Vicki, for all you do. Laura, welcome.
Hi, my name is Laura Cresson. I was an exchange to Japan in 2010-2011, hosted by the Cannon Falls Rotary Club, which is 5960. And I am on the outbound candidate committee for North Star Rotary Youth Exchange.
Cannon Falls is kind of a southern suburb of Minneapolis, St. Paul. Laura had an early return. I think I heard you're going to say a few words about that sometime during the presentation today. So really glad to have you here. Greg White.
Hi, everyone. I'm Greg White. I was a Rotary outbound student 6970. I was a member of both the St. Paul and the Golden Valley Club, and I was on the North Star Committee for many years, ending up finally as the Rotex coordinator. I've been in NAYEN about 3 or 4 times.
Wonderful, thank you. Break here, a call out to Nancy Schmidt, who group chatted that she's able to hear, but she can't speak, no microphone. So hi, Nancy, glad you're here. Lisa Miller. And guest.
Yeah, hi. My name is Lisa Miller. I was an exchange student to Germany from 2010 to 11. And for the here and there throughout the years since then, I've helped at the orientations, and I have a special guest today, and that is Sophia.
Hi, my name is Sofia Silva. I am from Chile. I was an exchange student from 2009 to 10 in Wyver Lake.
Wonderful. Welcome. So glad you're here. Thank you. Let's see. The Someone family, the Leshoff. Yes, there you go.
Hi, I'm Elliot Ost. I was an outbound this year from Minneapolis to Spain.
Wonderful.
My mother.
Are you so? Oh, hi. How are you? Yeah, welcome. Were you an early return this year?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Would love to hear from you through the meeting as well. Linda.
Hi, Linda Morris from District 5360, Southern Alberta, Canada, and I've been vice chair for this year, and I've been involved in the program for about 15 years, 10, 15 years.
Glad to have you here. Thanks, Linda. Todd?
Hi, my name's Todd Madison. I'm from 5630, which is the western 2/3 of Nebraska, and I'm up in the little rural town of Valentine. I was an exchange student to South Africa in 88 and 89, and I serve on the district committee.
Thanks so much for being here, Todd. Lisa Nerva? Oh, you said hello already. Katie, you said hello. Adam Hennings, one of our former previous speakers. Welcome back.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Hi, everybody. My name's Adam. I went to Austria with 5950, 5960 in 2004, 2005, and I'm coming at you from Washington, D.C.
Thanks, Adam. Nancy, welcome back.
Me? Hi.
Yes. Hi.
I'm Nancy Clementi. I am from Northwest Pennsylvania, District 7280. I'm the district chair, and I was formerly outbound to Australia back in the 70s, and I was also outbound coordinator for our district.
Glad you're here. Olga?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm a fairly new member of this club, but transferred from a club in District 5610, which is South Dakota and the area, but I live in Minnesota, way out in southwest Minnesota in a small town called Lake Benton. So social distancing is a piece of cake here. There is no one.
There's no
so
one
I'm very glad to see you here.
Thank you. Hi, Rihanna.
Hi, Rihanna Garis. Went to France 0607 from White Bear Lake. Hey, Adam. Rotex president and current chair for the candidate outbound program at the North Star Rotary District. So.
Thanks very much, Steve S. Can't hear you, Steve. Your microphone icon, if you go to lower left, click on the microphone. There we go. Go for it.
Okay. I'm District 5100. I thought I already told you. I've already introduced myself.
Oh, you have. Thank you very much. Your photo shifted on my screen. Sorry about that. Kirk Anderson, our newly elected, our new mayor, our famous member of the E Club. Congratulations. Woo.
Yay. Well, thank you. I'm Kirk Anderson. I'm from St. Croix Falls, Wisconsin, and a former member of the St. Croix Falls Taylor's Falls Club, where I was the PR image person, and am currently the secretary of this club. And yes, I was just elected officially. The votes were counted on Monday to be the next mayor of St. Croix Falls. So thank you.
Congratulations. Thrilled for you. Lucky St. Croix Falls. Lynn Keeler.
Hello, my name is Lynn, and I'm a member of the Minneapolis South Rotary Club. I was an exchange student to Norway in 1989, and I am on roles within North Star. Too many to list.
Thanks, Lynn. Thanks for everything. Juanita.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Juanita Ravelo from District 4195, and I live in Villahermosa, Tabasco, from the Rotary Club Real del Grijalva.
Juanita is a very strong exchange partner in Southern Mexico. Thank you for being here. Jane.
Yeah, hi, John.
Jane.
Hi, good to hear your voice. This is Jane McGinty. I am the Youth Exchange Officer for our Eden Prairie Morning and Noon clubs. And I'm a former Youth Exchange student to Germany 91, 92. And I'm also a Rotary Youth Exchange cheerleader for many friends on the call, including Chris Ann, Vicki, John, Lynn, and my parents, Jack and Ann. Hi.
Thanks so much, Jane. Eden Prairie is a southwest suburb of Minneapolis. Silver Cross JW.
Hi, Fran Hochhausen, District 5360, Southern Alberta, Canada. I am the chair of Rotary Youth Exchange in our district, with a lot of help from Linda, who is the vice chair, and I'm calling in from work, hence no camera.
No problem. Thanks for being here. Beth. There we go.
Sorry, I'm here.
No problem.
I'm the district chair for 5440 in Wyoming and Northern Colorado.
Thank you very much. Nancy Schmidt can't speak, but hi to Nancy again. Paul Regan.
Thank you, John. Paul Reagan from Fayetteville, Arkansas, District 6110, recent past president of NAYEN. I did my exchange in Vietnam in 1967 and 68.
Thank you for being here, Paul. Lindy.
Good afternoon. From the foothills of California, I'm with District 5190. Currently the district's youth services chair. Luckily, my computer does not have a camera, so you don't have to deal with that image today. But I really loved attending last week, and so am thrilled to be here again this week. Thank you so much for having this opportunity available to us.
Thanks, Lindy. If you wanted, I could find a photo of you on the internet someplace and post it
Oh,
to
you
the
probably, oh, you probably could, undoubtedly. I've worked for nonprofits at 30 years, and so somewhere along the line.
Somewhere there's a photo. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Megan Hoff.
Hello, I'm actually a colleague of Katie Savanich. I work with College Possible and I work with students, and I thought this might be useful in having conversations with my students who were studying abroad this semester.
So glad you're here, Megan. Thanks for joining. Becky.
Becky Fontaine, District 5020, immediate past chair and sometimes known as the mother of youth exchange in our district, and incoming board member to NAYEN for Area 4A, which is part of Wessex.
Very good. And what part of the country are you in, Becky?
Washington, and then we also, our district spills over into Vancouver Island.
Wonderful. Thanks very much. I've seen a couple of other, Brennan, if you can just say hi and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Brennan Flagel. I went to New Zealand 13-14 with North Star, and I am a Rotex assistant coordinator.
Thanks so much. Karen, did you introduce yourself before?
No, I didn't. Hi, John. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
I'm Karen Aspaug. I am Rotex, Sweden in 1972-73. I live in Hastings, Minnesota, and I'm here today as a guest of Greg White.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. Did we miss anyone as I went around? I know a couple of new people have popped on. If not, welcome everyone. This is a lovely turnout, and I just really, again, as with past meetings, love the geographic diversity and our Canadian friends, and Juanita again representing Mexico. It's just it's really, I think this surpasses our expectations of what we thought this club would be. So we really appreciate all of you. I'm going to turn it over to Chris Ann Manolis to introduce our speaker today and sort of facilitate a conversation with Dennis about a pretty timely topic about returning exchange students and the pandemic. So Chris Ann, take it away.
Thank you, John. We are so happy to welcome Dennis White to our club today. The expertise he'll share germinated from his Peace Corps experience in Iran in 1968 to 70. And upon his return, he earned a PhD in clinical psychology and has worked in a variety of social service agencies and universities. He is currently a licensed psychologist in private practice in Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin. Dennis has worked with many international exchange programs, making annual presentations around the world. And I have been fortunate to attend many of his presentations, more than once, I may say, and I always pick up something new. Many of you are familiar with his written materials about culture shock, reverse culture shock, and ethnocentrism. We all use his materials in our inbound, outbound, and rebound orientations. Recently, Dennis and a few other Rotarian colleagues developed an online course highlighting the unique experience of exchange students during COVID-19. Our approach with returning students must be different this year. Their exchange year wasn't what they dreamt of. Some students ended their exchanges early, whether they wanted to or not, and others are still in their host countries under quarantine. So today's meeting is really a heads up for all of us. Also with us is Laura Cresson. In 2011, she was literally yanked out of Japan when the earthquake and tsunami hit her host city. She had no closure. She wasn't able to say goodbye. Her city was underwater. She had no choice in the matter. She was quickly whisked back to the United States. And when Laura returned home, I am certain that we did not do enough for her. So she's here as a resource to anyone who might have questions for her. So Dennis, without further delay, please tell us what you want us to know.
Well, thank you very much, Chrisanne. I appreciate the introduction. As we went through the participants, I realized I'm among a lot of friends, or at least a lot of acquaintances that I list as friends from all over the place. So it's really nice to see all your faces and hear your voices. I was asked to say a little bit about myself and where I'm from that perhaps Chrisanne didn't cover. So like a returned exchange student, can you see my, my little map of Wisconsin? Is it showing up?
No.
No?
No.
Oh, I didn't click the right button. John took me through this specifically to show me how to do it, and I didn't do it. I'm sorry.
We had our practice session. Yeah, it's the share button with the little upward arrow.
The share button. Yes. Okay. Now can you see my state of Wisconsin?
There we go. Thank you.
Okay, get up, get big. Okay. So our district is the central and northeast portion of Wisconsin and the part of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan that you see there. And Door County, the community I live in, is the little thumb that sticks out into Lake Michigan on the eastern side that forms the Bay of Green Bay. And here's a more closer up view, and you can see why I'm a Green Bay Packer fan. We're like 37 miles from Lambeau Field in our house. And this is Sturgeon Bay. We have an iconic bridge that's on the historical register. And we have lots of outdoor activities that you can enjoy. Come when this pandemic is over and join us. My wife and I, Liz and I, get to watch the sunset from our house just about every night. And you see this beautiful deck down there in the sunset? Well, on March 30th at 5:30 in the morning, an ice shove came in and completely wiped out the deck, the boat, everything. And so we can't even tell what the damage is yet because it hasn't melted. It'll probably be still there in May. So here's my wife Liz with me at an EMA conference 2 years ago in France. You probably recognize the water tower in the background. And here we are, both born and raised in St. Louis, and this is us a year ago dressed up for opening day against the Milwaukee Brewers. And we're still waiting for that this year. So that's the way it goes. You know, all the consequences here of the virus and the pandemic, it's sports fans are feeling the pinch just as well as everybody else. An integral part of that, as well as Larry Kubiak, a psychologist in the Florida multi-district. Also, who am I leaving out here, Paul? Ricardo Ruiz from Mexico.
Mike Cloutier.
Mike Cloutier, the genius of electronics and NAYEN. And
Rick
this
Eisted.
course, pardon?
Pauline.
Rick Eisted.
Pauline Perot, my goodness, she was kind of the spearhead of this thing. Anyway, if you want to find the course, it's on the NAYEN website, nayen.org. When you go to nayen.org, it will bring up a greeting, and if you just wait a few seconds, it will replace the flags of the 3 countries in NAYEN with the course called Coming Home in the Coronavirus World. It is intended to be 2 things. One, a sort of self-help for any student that wants to go through the material. But more than that, something for youth exchange officers, rebound coordinators, anyone who wants to sort of take students through a virtual debriefing or a virtual retreat in the unusual circumstances of this return. And if you go there and use it, we would definitely appreciate your feedback on its usefulness, because it's kind of a cliche to say now, but this is all unprecedented and we don't quite know. The picture changes so rapidly that some of the stuff we've put in it may not be relevant, but we tried, so you're welcome to look at it. Now, what am I looking for? I thought I had this nicely arranged, but obviously I didn't. Now, do you see a slide that says coming home, the normal rebound experience?
You're not sharing, Dennis.
I didn't share that either? Jeez, Louise, John, how are you gonna get me to do this right?
We'll get you trained in, Dennis. I have an online training you can take. Kidding.
Share, and why isn't it showing up where it's supposed to be?
Yep. Yeah, there you go.
Now you can see it?
Should be coming up here in a sec.
You can see a white cursor on a black screen.
Oh, well, yeah, great. That's my bad. Okay. I thought I had the thing.
You have it open? Do you have it open on your computer?
I have it open on my computer.
Then if you click on the bottom of the Zoom screen, the share screen icon.
I know that's what's supposed to happen.
Yep, it'll bring up every program that you have open.
There it is, finally.
There we go.
Got it.
Now I have to get it to, somehow things got shrunk here.
It's okay, I think if you click slideshow, and then start from the beginning, the first icon to the left.
Yeah.
Up from there. It says from beginning. Up, up, up.
From current slide, way up left.
Up a little further.
Right
One
there?
over. Yep, there we go.
There we go.
There you go.
Oh, thank you. We got through that so smoothly. Yeah. Okay, now just a quick background, and I don't want to do a whole lot of talking here, but I just want to point out that the rebound experience is extremely difficult under normal circumstances. And Rotary has never, in my opinion, done justice to that rebound experience. It's what got me in Rotary and what's got me in Youth Exchange. And I can say that I've seen a lot of improvement over the years. But as we all know, we're so busy recruiting students, training them, finding host families for inbounds. And when our outbounds come home, it's like we breathe a sigh of relief, like, thank God they're home. And then we move on to the next task. So it's difficult for students to experience coming home, and we need to do better. How we're going to deal with people coming home or stuck wherever they are, and they're not necessarily stuck, but in an interrupted exchange, that's the trick. So The quick definition of culture shock is that sense of disorientation and discomfort that comes from living or traveling extensively in another culture. Now, there are fairly predictable stages that include that initial excitement, then irritability, then gradual adjustment and adaptation, and finally, some degree of cultural competence. And usually that happens about the time that students have to come home. So if you see stages 1, 2, 3, and 4, they correspond to the months of an exchange, starting with before departure. We know how excited our outbounds are once they know, even when they don't know where they're going. And once they do, it's incredible. But after a while, they run into the shock of, this place is not for tourists, this is where I live and I have to fit in. But when they really work at it, that third stage, that's a long, slow development, including language acquisition. And finally, they get pretty competent. And that comes just about the time we tell them they have to come home. So when students are coming home, they often aren't as excited about coming home as they were when they were departing. And then when they get home, it's not the way they thought it was going to be, even though it's normal for their culture, they've changed. So they experience this thing of reverse or re-entry shock that is unexpected and difficult because we usually think we shouldn't have to adjust to our own culture. So dealing with reverse culture shock is difficult because most people expect some culture shock, but many don't think they should have to adapt to their own culture. And the most important thing is many people don't realize how much they've changed until they get home. And then they seem to think that everybody else has changed when it's really them. So the stages coming home are kind of the same, except that that initial excitement stage may either be very brief or it doesn't happen at all. And the irritability stage can last a long time, and it can go back and forth with gradual adaptation back to irritability, and sometimes students can be really, really confused. I certainly was when I came home after 2 years in the Peace Corps. So here's sort of the yellow line, or the red line was the typical progression of culture shock I showed you with the chart in the background. The yellow line is more typical of a rebound coming home. They may be excited, but once they've done everything for the first time, it just sort of falls off to like, oh my God, is this the way it's going to be forever? Oh, do I have to sit in this high school for a whole year? Why are these people acting so weird? Don't they understand the rest of the world? Et cetera, et cetera. And you see the wavy line at the bottom is their attempts where they realize if I'm going to fit in here, I have to work at it. But then they feel like they're giving up what they learned. They're going back to a person that they aren't anymore. And then they try again, and it can go up and down for a long period of time. So the repeated attempts to adapt and falling back to irritability eventually get to adjustment. But my daughter, who was an outbound to Ecuador in 2002-03, took about 5 years to get her feet back on the ground, which was a source of great distress to her parents, but she did it. And then not too long ago, she was an American Peace Corps volunteer herself to Uganda, and she's been back in the United States for a short while. Now, the blue line here is the hard landing, so to speak, of reverse culture shock. The person who didn't want to come home, doesn't have any excitement, they just fall off a cliff. And that is certainly going to be characteristic of many people coming home under the pandemic here. Although there may be all the excitement that goes with concern for family and friends, but then when we can't really see them and hug them, I'm guessing it's going to lead to some real difficult stage 1 reverse culture shock. So this kind of culture shock I've been describing is normal. It just maybe doesn't feel normal. And Rotarians have developed ways to help normalize these things. And I'm referring here at the bottom to a resource section that explains how we give normal rebound students orientations. So that's that. I'm gonna now go to a different one, I hope. Okay, share again. No, didn't do it right. Sorry.
You'll be an expert by the end of the presentation today, Dennis.
That's being very optimistic. No, that's the old slideshow. I'm sorry. I apologize to everyone.
Don't apologize, Dennis. Just serve us drinks.
Well, I don't know if you can see, I'm having a Diet Coke in my University of Wisconsin fan cup. I can't help but, you know, put in a plug for that. I thought I had all of my slides in one place, but I obviously didn't. I'll just keep on trying. There it is. Sorry about that, folks. Is it up there now?
Yes.
All right.
Yes, it is. We can see it. Yep.
All right.
So if you go up to slideshow again on the top. Oh, there we go.
Got it? Okay.
Yep.
So this is where we're on uncharted territory. And even, I've forgotten already, Lisa, you're the one that was in Japan? Is that right?
No, that's Laura.
Laura, I'm sorry, Laura. Laura had the closest thing to this experience because the entire class of outbounds to Japan was sent home, just like is happening with the corona crisis. But at least they came home to a world that hadn't had hurricanes or mudslides or nuclear fallout. And so we weren't able to give them as much help as we could have, but at least they landed in familiar territory. The problem here is we don't know what it's going to be like because none of us living has ever experienced anything like this. And the pandemic began to affect the exchange program just about the time of that third stage of gradual adaptation, which is where people really get committed to their country. They become Ecuadorians, they become Japanese, they become whatever it is. And they were getting really comfortable with that, or at least knew where they still needed to work. So remember the typical stages of culture shock. This happened about in the 6th, 7th, 8th month, and it happened differently in different countries. Some were abruptly sent home in the first inkling of a serious situation. I just talked to James Landman from Brazil. They just brought all of their outbounds back from India yesterday by chartered flight. So it's all over the board. So what happened? As soon as the virus interrupted people's exchanges, what happened? School stopped, stay-at-home rules, Rotary meetings stopped, trips were canceled. Host parents might have been laid off or working from home. We're getting excited calls from natural parents. Some students wanted to get home immediately because they were concerned for their family. Some have insisted they want to stay the year out. Many were sent home despite their desire to stay. Traveling home became a new risk we never thought of before. And when they got home, many of them have been facing voluntary or even enforced quarantines that made the return home even more difficult. So this is all new. This is just new. So the normal progression of reverse culture shock is interrupted. The excitement, the sadness of leaving, frustration at how different home seems, and resistance to the idea to have to adjust, those are not as prominent as some of these feelings, at least from students that have returned that we've talked to. Many of them are angry at having to come home, at Rotary, at their parents, at their host parents, at the government, at the world. They're afraid for personal safety, the safety of host families they've left behind, fearful for the safety of their family and friends at home, the travel safety issues, confusion. Why did I have to go home and there's others that are still in country? And a sense of failure. I somehow failed because I didn't complete my exchange. I set all of these goals and I didn't get to meet them. And finally, the possibility of guilt that maybe as long as I was there after the exchange was interrupted, I was a burden to my host family and I didn't want to do that. And then lots of other feelings that we can't possibly imagine. And I hope we'll find out about so that we can try to respond to them. So reverse culture shock in the coronavirus world is different from anything we've ever seen. That initial excitement may be obscured by many of the feelings I just mentioned. The excitement may be tempered by limited face-to-face reunions and worry. How's grandma? How's my aunt who's in a nursing home? The irritability and negativism may be directed as much as having to come home as being critical of one's own country. And when we talk about adaptation to home, it's not the same home that they left. It's a new normal that keeps changing every day. So finding the discovery that they've changed and that they've become bicultural may be really hidden with all this other stuff. It happened because for the first 6 to 8 months of their exchange, it was happening. But we almost have to separate the two, the before and after, to help people deal with this. So the first priority, of course, is dealing with continued safety, health, mental and physical health. The second one is to give students the opportunity to talk about and come to terms with all of the feelings plus others that we haven't even anticipated. And then talking about the cultural experience and personal growth will be so much harder than normal because it's not easy even under normal conditions. And people are going to be preoccupied with dealing with their present crisis, and return students may feel like their exchange got hidden and ignored. So the progression of culture shock and reverse culture shock I showed you before is listed here. Now, with the impact of the coronavirus in our world, the progression of reverse culture shock is probably not predictable at all. So all we can do is try to be on the ground, in touch with students as they tell us what's happening. And we need to take these things one step at a time. I just got some information from an inbound in the Scry district and one in Louisiana, where they're trying to get the Interact clubs to do more service related to the virus itself. So there's some students that are just itching to be of use, and they're handling their feelings by doing something like becoming of service. So they're going to teach us as much as we can teach them. So all of the feelings that I talked about here in the coronavirus situation are normal reactions to an abnormal situation. And that's really important. They're not having abnormal reactions to a normal situation. There's nothing normal about it. And we need to reinforce that every time we talk to students. We have to help them through this normal but unusual time in their adjustment. And many of the materials and exercises that we've adapted for people in the corona rebound category are in the resource section of the online course that I talk about. So that is more than enough, and I would certainly welcome any comments, questions, whatever.
I just wanted to say, this is Doug Lobel from Rotary Youth Exchange, Florida. My wife, Connie Lobel, has joined us. She is the country coordinator for Asia and has been busy bringing students back from Thailand, Taiwan, and she also has several countries in Europe. So, yeah, she's got Italy, which is really a challenge at this point, with flights that are scheduled and then canceled, and then they're rescheduled. And so the kids are really kind of being jerked around, and they're not sure when they're ever going to get home. And so I've invited her to sit in, so she's off her other Zoom call with the presidents and stuff. So
We probably need a separate course for Rotarians that are doing what Connie's doing right now. James Landman, many of you know from Brazil, shared that he hasn't had any sleep for a week trying to get these students home from India. And that's just one country. So
fortunately ours came home early from India. But it is a nightmare, and it's more of a nightmare now. We have a student that we don't know will ever get back to Ecuador because they're just not letting anybody in, not their own citizens. So yeah, it is a nightmare. You're right, Dennis, we do need the course.
Well, and the interesting thing is when you're country coordinator for Asia, your phone has to be on 24/7 because the calls come in from Asia at 3 in the morning and 2 in the morning. It's their daytime. So
thank you, Dennis.
I'll shut up.
Thanks so much for the presentation. Dennis, we'll take some more questions. I'm wondering if this is a time for Laura to jump in and just share her experience. Laura, I think your experience, as Dennis pointed out, is as close to what we're all going through at this moment as anyone on the call has ever experienced. Share your experience, share some of the feelings, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure. So I'll give some background. I was a gap year student. So after my senior year, I went to Japan and was in Sendai, which was straight west of the epicenter. So there was quite a considerable amount of damage to the city. I stayed with my host family for about a week after the earthquake and tsunami. And there was kind of this back and forth about whether I would stay or go home. And my host family said that they would be fine keeping me until Rotary decided that I should go home about a week after the earthquake. And so experienced difficulties with travel, which, as other people have described, are experiencing now. So the trip that took me a day of different flights from the US to my host city took me 3 days to get back through 5-hour taxi and bullet trains and flights. So when I came back, it was a lot of mixed emotions, obviously. I didn't want to come back. It wasn't my choice. I was given an hour's notice that I was leaving, so wasn't able to say goodbye to friends or my past host families. Just had to pack up my stuff and go. So, on the one hand, kind of some of the positive feelings, I was exhausted. I was glad to be back in an environment I was familiar with and have some stability back in my life, but had a lot more negative feelings of, feeling guilt for feeling like I was abandoning my host country and my host families, not being able to say goodbye to my host families and friends, and kind of feeling like I'd had this expectation of the end of my exchange, like those are supposed to be the best months of your exchange, and missed out on that. And, the kind of unfulfilled promises, or feeling like I didn't get to fulfill all my goals as an exchange student. And also kind of how isolating it felt to be back. This time of year, a lot of their friends are, students' friends are in school, or like for me, my friends were away from college. So I didn't have any friends around, and even for the students now, everyone's in isolation, so they can't go out and see their old friends. So it was kind of just stuck at home without a plan of what I wanted to do as far as like my education or career, what I wanted to do moving forward. And then also a lot of mental health issues. I came back and had post-traumatic stress disorder and severe depression and anxiety that I'm still dealing with to this day, with lots of therapy. And I think, I'm still really glad I did my exchange and had a great year. But it is hard to have this experience kind of at the end that had this big negative impact. And unfortunately, I talk about it with my mom sometimes, and she kind of wishes I hadn't gone exchange because she sees the negative impacts it's had on me like later in life, and kind of how it harmed me mental health wise, and didn't have someone tell me like, hey, if you're experiencing these symptoms, you should get professional help or just check in with a therapist or anything like that, which is probably something I should have done right when I came back, since it was such a jarring experience. So it was really difficult for me, but it also brought me closer to North Star. Got really close with Rotex, and they came and supported me when I did a fundraiser for a tsunami relief and raised about $5,000. And then getting involved with the exchange program and joining the committee and being a Rotex officer. So some good things came from it, but also it was a very difficult time in my life.
Laura, I just looked up. Oh, go ahead, Dennis.
I was going to say, I'm glad you mentioned the part about adjusting. And there's a section in this online course about what are some of the signs and symptoms that you might need help and where to go for that we try to get up there right up front and normalize that, post-traumatic stress is unfortunately a normal reaction to an abnormal situation. If you hadn't experienced a tsunami and you had those feelings, we'd say there was something wrong with you. But because you did, you were having a normal reaction. It's just still with you. And we need to get the word out to people that it's okay to seek help and that it's a good thing to do. So I'm glad you shared that with us.
And to follow up on that, Laura, I was going to ask you how long, you said you did seek some mental health, help at some point. How long was it before you started that? And do you have any recommendations for returning students now?
Honestly, my recommendation would be, I think every student coming back should at least have just like one check-in appointment with a therapist. And if they're feeling good and that therapist doesn't see any concerns, and that's fine. But if it's something that they see the student could benefit from some help, I think that would be good too. For me, I think I started going to therapy briefly 4 months after I came back, only for about a month, because then I was moving and had some situations change, and then seriously started again maybe 3 years after exchange, and I've been doing it consistently since then. I think it just kind of broke down a lot of like my resilience and how I handle stress. So if it was something I had taken care of earlier, it might have been easier to kind of come back from versus now, like as an adult.
What I'm really hearing from you is, this is far more difficult than I think a lot of the exchange coordinators might even realize. I've noticed some comments on some of the NAYEN listservs that, of course, that it's always, of course it's difficult, but these are the things we need to do. And then we kind of go as Rotarians and as organizers, we go into the organization. And of course we know this is hard, but I think what you're pointing out and exposing to those on the call and those who will see it is it's maybe far worse than any of us. I mean, far worse than I did not. I mean, I've known you for many, many years. This is the first I've heard about like the extent to which it impacted you. So I acknowledge you for being brave and sharing the whole story. I also did look up the date of the tsunami, and I think it was March 11th. So very timely in that it was right this time of year. It's almost, I mean, you couldn't pick a better example of someone who was returned jolted out of their family and, flooding and all the rest, can't say goodbye to friends and all the rest of it. So.
Yeah, I looked through all of Dennis's materials with the training course, and it was really great, extensive, but also made me feel really sad because I remember experiencing a lot of those normal feelings to their reactions. So I think it'd be great to share a lot of those and integrate them with the rebounds this year, because I think it's really important.
Hey, Laura, this is Rihanna. I remember when you came back, there were I'm just wondering if it'd be interesting for you to share about the other students, because you had 2 others that came back with you, and they got involved in different amounts as well. And I know we've stayed in contact with some of them to different degrees. And then there were a couple that didn't come back. That might be interesting, as some folks, we have some students that are still abroad and some who are back, and kind of differences within countries, I'm assuming. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I think there's 5 students who went out total. 3 had to come back, and North Star had a mini rebound for us. And I think, we all had different feelings about it of, some people got more notice and were able to say goodbye to more people. Some people didn't. And then also kind of the impact that it had on the students was different as well. I think I probably had a bit more of an extreme case than some of the other students. And then it was also one thing that was difficult going to the traditional rebound weekend was, some students were able to finish out their exchange and have kind of more fulfill some things, and some students were sent home earlier. And so that was also hard to reconcile with, and I'm sure we'll have to deal with that with our students of, some had sent home quite early and some are still there with their host families, quarantined of course, but able to have some interaction and be in their host country. So that's something that we have to think about and acknowledge too, that there's going to be a ton of different experiences.
Laura, do you have any specific advice for the Rotary coordinators on the call, whatever level, either the local club level or the district level or district chair or someone representing, the NAYEN organization between the 3 countries? Anything specific you could recommend to all of us?
I think having them try to at least have one therapy appointment just to check in. And I think helping them find a community, whether it's Rotex or connecting with other students that are coming back who just like people that they can talk to and share their experience. The nice thing about, sad that other students got sent home with me, but one student in particular, we talked a lot about it and kind of became really good friends because we had that shared experience. So helping your students connect with other people and it can be college kids that got sent home from exchange or other exchange students through Rotary, just someone that they can identify with and talk about those experiences and mixed feelings of coming back home.
Thank you so much. I'm going to ask Les, do you feel comfortable sharing a little bit about your story? And while he comes online, Laura, you might want to check the chat. There's it's been lighting up with comments for you.
Yeah. So I would say my re-entry into the U.S. was a bit easier. I myself had made the decision to come home, so I wasn't being forced by my Rotary Club or my parents. I was able to make that decision for myself. So I think.
Hey, Les, where are you from again, and what country? Yeah. Where were you, and what city?
I was in Spain. I live in Minneapolis. So and I think most people know Spain was one of the more harder hit countries in the beginning. So it was a big deal there. The country, I think, Spain in general did a very good job. Well, as good a job as they could to mitigate the spread. The city I was in was on the Atlantic coast, and it was probably one of the last to be hit by the coronavirus. So when I left, there were only 4 cases in my city. But yeah, I actually made the decision to come home 2 days before I actually left. So I had a little bit of time to kind of, at least say goodbye to my host family. I did get a brief send off with one of my friends in my city. It was the day before the city got shut down. So, but yeah, for me, it was just easier because I got to make that decision for myself. And honestly, a week later, I didn't really kind of experience any of those first, extreme feelings. Like, I was fairly comfortable with my decision to come home, and especially since, about a week later, Rotary Spain then decided to send everyone else home. So that really kind of made me feel good about my decision to come home. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks,
For me,
Elliot. Elliot, I thought your name was Les. Sorry about that. Someone had commented about. I'm so sorry. So Elliot, thanks for the comments, and I like what you're saying, because I think it points out, and Dennis, you would agree with this, that everyone reacts. Different people will react differently to this. You may have some students that are really reacting in one way, and other students may seem like they are okay, at least in the beginning. Dennis, there was some noise in the background, so I did mute you. So you'll have to unmute yourself if you want to comment in on that. But I guess one thing that I would say is, to Elliot, is be aware of where you are today. That may, just with this S-curve of up and down that Dennis talks about this, and Dennis, you can speak more to this. You may find out that today is okay, but month or two from now, as things unfold for all of us, maybe it's not as okay as it is today. So good advice for all of us and all of our students.
I think also the other thing to consider is kind of the circumstances of now everyone being in quarantine or safe at home programs, of now on top of dealing with reverse culture shock, even if you aren't dealing with an extreme reaction of coming home, now there's a social isolation piece that's kind of layering more baggage on top of that. So I think that's why, I hope that you've been able to connect with some other students or friends while you've come home, because it's important not to isolate, which sometimes as a rebound you feel more inclined to do sometimes.
John, I had an experience. I had a young lady in training to go to Japan, to be in that general area, that they were canceling her exchange and trying to find someplace else to send her. And she was very insistent that she wanted to go. And we worked through the system, and we were able to send her. And it was a life-altering situation for her, because she was able to help the people there. She was involved in helping the people there, and she's become a real superstar. She's been back to Japan numerous times since then, and speaks Japanese and writes it fluently and everything else. And so I think she told me that being involved in helping, and then being able to go back several years later, that it really helped her and put things in perspective. And so, it might be difficult for Laura, but maybe, if you ever get the opportunity to go back or be in that area, that might be something that would be helpful, to help overcome some of the feelings that you're having.
Thanks, Doug. Elliot's mom, do you have comments? Would you like to? I'm the parent of 2 returned exchange students, and I can't imagine.
Yeah, so it's his decision to return was a little bit unexpected, because as we had been kind of talking with him and touching base, as coronavirus kind of spread across Spain, he was feeling really comfortable about being there, and feeling like, and we were, people were taking precautions, and he was feeling good about things. And then something flipped one day, and I suppose it was when they announced that they were in a lockdown, and that everybody had to stay in their homes in Spain. And you couldn't even take a walk, right? So it's a little bit different than here. And at that point, he made the decision to come home, and we supported that. We did have him sleep on it for a couple nights, because we wanted this not to be an impulsive decision. And we have a good friend who's one of the assistant commissioners of health in the Minnesota Department of Health, and we actually FaceTimed with him and Elliot and kind of consulted on the decision. And that was really helpful too. So for me, there's a sense of loss for him for not completing the year.
I don't know. For me, it wasn't as big of a loss. I kind of looked at it as I'm more restrained in Spain than I would be in the U.S. I mean, it's pretty much the same situation. I mean, everything that I was looking forward to, really, Euro Tour, the Camino de Santiago trip, which they do in Spain, that was all canceled because of the coronavirus outbreak. So nothing was really happening for me to look forward to. I would have been spending my days in the house. I wouldn't leave. So,
which we're doing now.
We're doing now. However, we do have a little bit more freedom, granted. So, yeah.
I mean, and just as all of you, we now are just trying to figure this out day to day. So we did have to quarantine Elliot at home for 2 weeks. And so, you know, he's just been out of that for a week and a half, and he's actually got a fever right now, and so we don't know what's going on. And because we're kind of done with quarantine, our whole family is now quarantining, and we're not keeping him in his room. So hopefully, whatever he has will be mild.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, it's you know, everyone is traumatized, everyone's depressed. I mean, you know, you have one additional aspect that the rest of us aren't dealing with, and it's a big one. But man, this is, as we've talked about in the past couple of meetings, this is rough times for all of us, for sure.
Hey, John, I wanted to mention one other thing. Cassie Moyers, who is the chairman of the District 6970, which is Jacksonville all the way down to Daytona Beach, Florida.
Yep.
Every Saturday, she has an hour to an hour and a half Zoom call with all of her students that are still out, that have come back, and some that are in training that they've just been canceled because RIYE Florida has canceled all 2021, 21-22 exchanges. And so that, I've listened, my wife participates in it, but I've listened to part of it, and it seems very therapeutic for all of those students talking about their individual circumstances and the things they're going through. And so that might be something that we could suggest that others do. And those kids really look forward to every Saturday. And, you know, it helps connect the kids that are still out and the ones that are here from overseas. And so I think it's a really good suggestion. And you might want to just listen in on a Saturday. And if you want to contact my wife, she can make sure that you get the information as to how to do that.
Yeah, we really love it.
I would also encourage you to have Cassie share this with everyone else. This is what she's doing. Send out an email on to NAYEN Talk or social media, because she's now got quite a bit of experience under her belt, and she can attest to the fact that this is a moving target, and she's got kids in every stage of exchange. And by the fact that they're talking to one another, that's the key. It's not that we have a corner on what's happening to them. She's giving them the opportunity to tell us and tell one another what's happening. And she comes from a long family of Rotary Youth Exchange, so she knows what she's doing.
She does.
And she has some really good Rotecs that participate, and they really have helped the other kids as they have questions.
Thanks so much, Doug. Doug, do you have my email address? If you email me information on those Saturday links, I can distribute it to the group.
Yeah, we'll do that. I have your homepage for your district. So
for the district, yeah. Thanks so much. Hey, Lisa Miller, I'm wondering if your friend, our guest, would like to say a few words. I'm really not sure. Are you visiting? Are you here inbound? What's the situation?
She's with me, and her flight was canceled that she did have a flight back to Chile, but that isn't happening.
So
So-
are you an inbound, are you a current inbound student waiting on? Nope.
No.
No,
This
no,
is
no,
she's
no,
10. This is 10 years ago. She was in Minnesota.
Got it. So you're visiting Minnesota, you've returned, and now you're kind of stuck with us.
She's here with me. Like, she was in New York. She was in Brooklyn, and then we're quarantined together on Long Island.
You're in New York right now. Sorry, Lisa.
Yeah. No, it's okay.
Got it. Sounds good. Have you experienced this also, where the flights are rescheduled and then recanceled and then rescheduled and recanceled? Yeah. Do you have any comments from either of your experiences on exchange that you'd like to add to today's meeting?
I am a psychologist back home in Chile, so if anyone have somebody that went to South America and needs somebody to talk, I would love to do it, because when I was an exchange student 10 years ago, I didn't have a preparation like before coming and after, so I didn't know anything about this information. So I really have a very tough time. I felt very depressed, and I earned so many kilos after my exchange student, and I didn't know anything. So I really can imagine for those kids, they came back plus the coronavirus. So yeah, if I can support with something, I'm helping to do it.
Thank you so much. Oh, Adam, did you have a question?
Yeah, if I can.
Go for it.
So I'm a Foreign Service Officer with the Department of State. Part of what I do when I'm normally in Mongolia is coordinate exchanges sponsored by the Department of State, both for youth and for adults. And so much, I've never made the connection between my own training as a rebound and as a Rotex and what the exchange participants that I'm responsible for are going through right now. So I really want to thank you, Dennis, for bringing that all back to me. And I was just clicking through the course, and I wanted to know if you think it would be, if it's appropriate content for adults who are going through a similar experience, and if there is any sort of proprietary information that would prevent me from sharing that with other people.
Yes and no. It is as a former Peace Corps volunteer, I've been in touch with current volunteers. If you may know that the U.S. Peace Corps sent everybody home. That's the first time in the history of the Peace Corps. They've sent countries home when there's been social unrest or natural disasters, but the entire Peace Corps population was pretty abruptly sent home. And I've shared some of this information with them, and they're finding it useful. The returned students on study abroad, anybody, and it's free and open to anybody. There's no proprietary rights to anything. We encourage people to disseminate the information. We have a Spanish translation that is almost ready to be put up in the same place. And I'm told that it's all been translated into French by the French Youth Exchange Multi-District. So great for them. Well, so that's the answer to the question.
I have a part two. For anybody on the call, has anybody from the Office of Private Sector Exchanges at the Bureau of Education and Cultural Affairs of the State Department reached out to anybody about the Rotary programs, or both to offer guidance or to steal ideas? I'm just curious.
Paul?
Yes, through CSIET. Are you familiar with CSIET, Adam?
I am not.
Okay, it's an organization of youth exchange organizations in the United States that was formed to self-regulate the industry when there were some bad things going on in the industry. And they also see themselves in a role of interacting with the government. So yes, they have been interacting at that level, not directly with Rotary, but with the organization that connects. I'm on that CSIET board, so they've reached out, talked to us. I think what we're all seeing is that governments and organizations such as Rotary are reluctant to step in and make pronouncements. They're leaving it up to the organizations.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from anyone to any of today's speakers or guests?
Could I ask a question?
Sure, Nancy.
I'm interested in what anybody has to say. I have 3 students still inbound, and I'm concerned about the host families and how they're handling, everybody's sheltering in place. This is in Pennsylvania, so, Pennsylvanians are not going anywhere right now. I had one host father contact me last week. He said, school's canceled for the rest of the year. We want to send her home. And luckily our YEO took her in that night so she could stay until she can make arrangements to get home. But do you have suggestions on how I should deal with these families? I want to offer them some help or some guidance, because I'm thinking they're probably having a tough time with these kids being there 24/7 now.
Vicki, would you like to, I see you took yourself off on mute. Would you like to respond to that?
I think it is an appropriate thing to check in with these host families to take a real temperature of how they're feeling about hosting. When we asked them to host, this pandemic wasn't happening, and now it's a new situation. So I would hope that most host families would say they're making it work. But if they're not feeling comfortable, or they're feeling like the student is creating a higher risk. I know there was a outbound student that was kind of not really taking seriously the stay-at-home piece, and I think we need, we talked to him and talked to him about his risking the health of the whole household. So I think there's so many more considerations and conversations that need to happen at this time, and forcing a host family to continue to host certainly wouldn't be appropriate. Are there other options, I guess, is the thing to ask. It's a hard time, Nancy, and I think we just need to feel our way through it and think of it from all different perspectives, from the student, from the host family, from the program, to transportation, everything in between. So the reason I unmuted, and John, I think that Nancy's question should be pursued more, but the reason I unmuted is I wanted to hear from Dennis and Paul about sort of their gut feeling about the future of the program next year. So, and maybe
if I can comment just before you get off onto that.
Yeah, Doug.
One of the things in District 6950, which is in the Tampa area of Florida, we have found that when host families get into that situation Nancy's talking about, that Rotarians and Rotary clubs that have never stepped up to host, when they find out, they rise to the occasion.
Yeah.
So what you need to do is reach out to the Rotary clubs where that student is in that area, and you'll find some people that will take them in now that wouldn't have ever stepped up to be a host parent for 3 months or whatever.
And Nancy, I also wanted to comment, I was contacted by a YEO within the past 2 weeks, and even within the family, mom wanted the student to go home and dad wanted the student to stay, and the student wanted to stay. So even within the family, it's not that the family is necessarily in agreement on what should happen to the student. There can be, in that particular situation, the YEO went out of her way to spend a ton of time talking through all the options, not influencing in any way. And the family did decide with the natural parents and the student to keep the exchange intact for now. I think it was in the early days of our shelter-in-place order here in the state of Minnesota, and there was just a lot of fear. And just thinking through that with the family helped that one family, continue with the exchange for the time being. So. But just to acknowledge that often even within the family, there'll be differing opinions on what to do.
One other thing that we found is that since schools are not in session, and our host families have to live in the school district that the student is going to that school, but once there is no school, you can reach out outside the school district to other areas and find people that might host that typically wouldn't because they weren't in that school district.
Thank you, Doug.
Good idea.
I was going to say, in response to your question about the kids that are in place now, Vicki said it very well. The first thing is to keep in regular contact with these host families, because and John just gave an example of a disagreement within one family. Maybe a family, someone's been laid off and they've got a real severe economic hardship here. Maybe they've got a family member that has underlying health problems, and so they're worried about their student and their family member. Doug's bringing out the point that I always make, that in a disaster, it brings out the best and worst in people. And there's a good example of it bringing out the best. But we need to be in touch with them because they may be reluctant to step forward and tell us what their concerns are. Oh, and as far as the future of the program, I'm normally a very optimistic person. But when I see multi-districts and districts that send out a lot of kids canceling their exchange all around the world, it's going to tumble. And we're going to see, if anything, a very, very small exchange program for the next couple of years, even for people who want to go ahead and do it. I mean, where are your trading partners going to be if they can't or won't accept people? And we have no idea what the United States is going to be like in 6 months. We have hopes, but nobody knows. So there's no need to cancel prematurely, but for example, I don't know if any of you saw that Melody St. John in Scanex in California did an entire outbound orientation on Zoom with breakout sessions and different presenters, and they're still in the go mode, at least anticipating the possibility that they'll have the exchange. Who knows?
Well, one of the things that we've done to preserve our program is we already have students that are already halfway through their training to go out and had orientations. And those that don't age out, we have assured them that if things open up, that the following year they will have their first place in line. It just gives them an extra year to do their language. We'll make sure they get into their same country to preserve as many. Now, there are some students that are going to age out, and some of them are going to have to go off to college, but reinforcing at least our outbounds. We can't control the inbounds, but the outbounds, it's important to let them know that they haven't wasted, their time since November when we selected them.
Thanks, Doug. Lynn Keeler, if you could unmute yourself, you brought up the four-way test and applying it throughout this situation. And I'm just wondering if you can put your chat comment into words for the group, please.
I sure can. The club that I'm in have had 2 inbound students. One of them saw the writing on the wall in early March and said, "I'm out of here," and he left. And the other student was pretty determined that she was going to stay, and she's still here. But it took a lot of coordination with her host families. Of course, it didn't hurt that she has endeared herself to absolutely everybody. But it became a 5-way conversation between me, her natural mother, host mom number 1, host mom number 2, and host mom number 3. And between all of us, we established plan A, plan B, all the way down to plan E of what we could do to support the student and support the host families. So we knew if something came up with one of the host families, we had something else, somewhere else to go. And through all that, the 4-way test, I kept thinking about it, and will this be beneficial? Is this fair? And not just fair to the host families. Is this fair to the student? Is this fair to her mom back in her home country? And we did have a situation. Her third host family, their daughter returned from India. And I had to think, is this fair to all concerned that this student remain in this family? And I decided to move her. It was not a popular decision with the host family, the third host family, but I had to think, is this fair to the exchange student? Is this fair to the returning exchange student who's going to need, as we've talked about today, a lot of TLC? So we developed a really comprehensive plan for her, and again applied the 4-way test of, is this fair and beneficial?
One other comment I wanted to make was that if having a student home 24/7 is problematic. In many cases, and my wife and I have hosted 24 students over the years, and many times we've had 2 students at a time in our home because we have the room. And sometimes you can look at having them actually go, since they don't have to worry about school districts, to go with a family that can accommodate, and the 2 kids can help keep each other busy so it doesn't affect the family as much. And that's another thing you can look at.
Thanks, Doug. A couple of questions on our comments on chat. Linda Beatty, have any of you changed your views on how to select students for the program? Anyone has thoughts of that, please comment. And Paul Reagan, about a possible shortened exchange, if you can unmute yourself and just speak to that as well.
Sure. This is Paul. Thank you, John. I really have enjoyed this meeting. First of all, I'd like to suggest that you people who have these stories about the reactions of parents and students, please write them down. We need to accumulate this and have it for a historical record. Secondly, I'd like to say that most of the long-term programs in the United States, AFS, YFU, et cetera, are considering a shortened long-term program, which would start sometime in mid-December, probably after the first semester finishes, and end the following mid-July, which would give approximately a 7-month exchange. The Department of State is in the loop on this. Everybody's looking at the options to see if they could make something like that happen, if it's possible in the COVID-19 situation.
Thank you so much. Any comments on change in how to select students moving forward? Let's just make the assumption this impacts exchange for the next 3 years. Let's just say. How does this change how we, and let's assume that exchanges do proceed in some way. Do the requirements for exchange change in any way?
One of the big considerations, John, is whether or not schools will accommodate people coming in at semester. And that they're the unknown. All the athletic associations are members of CSIET, and they drive the ship on that question, and they seem to be on board. But of course, the principal's going to make the decision.
I'd like to share that from some of the Wessex meetings that we've been having, which have been every other week for about 6 weeks now. We are also having school districts tell us that they are simply not accepting exchange students on the U.S. side of our district. So I think, this is an onion with lots of layers, and whether you talk about host families or clubs whose fundraisers have been blown out of the water, or school districts, or shortened exchanges, which I actually really like that idea, or no exchanges. I just think that it's constant conversation. And in Wessex, about 1/4 of the districts have already indicated that they're out for next year. They just don't see staying in as a probable course of action for them. So they've already made that decision.
Thank you.
If I might jump back in real quick, the schools that are making that decision are looking at the full year, in my opinion. I don't think any of them have even heard of the possibility of a half-a-year exchange program.
Hi, this is Brennan. I just wanted to put in my 2 cents, having went to New Zealand and being on the opposite kind of year to the Rotary year calendar, and also being a country officer, I deal with these exchanges that are going out in December and returning, or going out January, returning December. And I do find that quite a few schools are open to the idea of students coming in mid-semester, or at least near the start of a semester. Schools tend to be fairly flexible, and obviously with these changing conditions, that can always change, but there's always a way to make it work, I feel like.
Thanks, really important contribution, Brennan. Thank you.
Someone
asked that, I'm just gonna interject here that someone asked that I shared the link from last week's meeting with current NAYEN President Lynn Stroshin, because this topic was discussed extensively if you were not here. So that's in the chat if you want to grab that URL. I'm sorry, who spoke up?
Vicky.
Oh, Vicky, go ahead. Thank you.
I just have this, always have this tendency to be a little bit of the cheerleader on the side and say, hey, we can make it through these tough times. I think that youth exchange in general, but Rotary Youth Exchange has faced hurdles before. And as leaders, we really need to lean into the wind and make sure the sail is going in the right direction. I think this would be, I think the thing that I find most fearful about maybe some programs not doing anything with youth exchange next year is their tendency to just let it fall aside for a long term. And that scares me. And I think that we're already on a little bit of a decline, and I think we need to lean into this strong and say we can get through this, and we'll be satisfied with fewer numbers if we don't have the same numbers next year. But I think to let it lie fallow is just, it scares me. And
Vicky,
okay, so schools maybe not ready for this new idea, but I think as advocates and salespeople for the program, we need to just spend a little more conversation with people and help them understand the situation. So, and there
Vicky and I have worked together for many years, and we have many clubs that have started to, go to this every other year format just in regular times. And what we tell them is, it's really hard when you're on every other year. You get this momentum and then you go down, and then you get this momentum and then you go down. And both of us have, and others have really dissuaded clubs from, not taking that year off or not getting all the way out of it. So this was discussed also on the meeting last week with just, even if the exchanges don't proceed, use this time to reevaluate your club, do additional planning, come up with a great plan for the future. Paul, I just love this idea that, State Department and others may be embracing a 7-month exchange. I head up for our district for North Star, the language acquisition program, as many of you know. I was contacted by a student this week who said, I just found out this morning my exchange was canceled for next year to the country which he was going to. I may be reassigned. And I said, well, this is just one former exchange student to you. If you have the opportunity to go anywhere, I do not care where it is, whether or not you ever thought you saw yourself there. If there is any opportunity for you, even a shortened exchange next year, take it. This is your time. I mean, this is a positive message we can say to students. Look, maybe you had your heart set on Austria and you were sent to Austria, and you know what, and then you find out you're going to Mexico, and Mexico was not your first choice. It wasn't your second or your third. As a former exchange student to Mexico, I can tell you it wasn't my first, second, or third. It's my second home. I love it. Exchange changes you, So I think anything we can do to preserve any exchanges moving forward, wherever that is, whatever the exchange partner, let's encourage it and remain positive.
One of the other things I wanted to mention is that I have several counties that the school district has a meeting with all representatives of all programs that want to put kids in their schools. And when I attended the very first one, it became very obvious to me that they don't differentiate us from those other programs. And yet there's a tremendous difference between us. And so I set up meetings after the meeting with the 28 others, with the people in charge. And I explained how Rotary is so much different because it's Rotary Club to Rotary Club. There's responsibility. And it has made a tremendous difference in how they will deal with us.
A real marketing opportunity, even in these tough times. You guys, it's super funny about these meetings. When we first envisioned these e-clubs, we envisioned a 20-minute presentation, 10 minutes worth of questions, and done. And then as we started the meetings, they went to an hour. And now the meetings have been drifting towards an hour and a half. These are great discussions. We're all such similar people, and it's just so great to be together all over. But let's see what time it is here. It's top of the hour, so we've been on for an hour and a half. I move to end the meeting. Any final comments? I do have one more thing to share here. Anyone for a final comment?
Thank you, Dennis and Paul and Laura and Elliot and everybody who joined.
Thanks so much, Vicki. Just a few things. yeah, you know, the voluntary meeting donation. We're a brand new club. We have about $2 in the account. Anyone who takes pity on us, we certainly appreciate it. $10 is great, but if you feel like supporting a new e-club to really help get the youth exchange and cultural exchange message out there, we appreciate it. And also my new member pitch, you know, we are open to anyone. So if you know of anyone in your state, your province, your area that is not able to make regular meetings because of time, physical disability, any other reason, and has a love or passion or interest in youth exchange, please have them contact us. Our dues are rock bottom, $25 a month or $270 per year, and you can contact us here. And then we have this new Supporting E-Club Friends program as well. If you're a current Rotarian in other clubs, obviously you won't be joining our club, but you can become a friend of the E-Club for $100 a year. It gets you unlimited meetings and unlimited makeups for those of you that still like your makeups. So that is my pitch. And we end our meetings, as those who have attended before know, with the 4-way test. So if we can all unmute ourselves and say this together. Wait for people to unmute. Okay, ready? The 4-way test of the things we think, say, and do.
Say and do.
Is it the truth?
Is it the truth?
Is it fair?
Is it fair to all concerned?
Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned?
And John, I'll put my $100 in to join because I think this is great.
Hey, Doug, you know what? I'm gonna, I don't know, I'll find some way to feature you prominently. You're our #1 friend.
Well, I'm gonna borrow the money from Dennis.
Thanks so much, everyone. These meetings bring joy to my life in a very difficult time in the country. So I hope they do to all of you as well. This has been wonderful. And for those new to the meeting, this is the same link every Wednesday at 4:30 Central. So please join anytime you'd like.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Dennis.
Bye. Thank you so much,
Bye.
Dennis.
Okay,
Thanks
God
to
bless
other speakers,
everybody.
I think all of who have left. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.